Good Friday afternoon. Thanks for joining us on KARE 11 News Now. I'm Chris Harapsky. This afternoon, Maplewood police are actively searching for a suspect in a deadly hit-and-run crash. It happened earlier this morning. The incident happened by Maryland Avenue and Lakewood Drive, it's just north of Beaver Lake. Authorities say they found a man lying on the road with injuries consistent with being struck by a vehicle. Despite life-saving measures, the man died at the scene. Police say witnesses reported seeing the suspect fleeing from the area. Officers say they have the suspect's vehicle information and they continue looking for that individual. Today, Minneapolis holding its first mayoral debate for this election cycle. The event kicked off just after 8 o'clock this morning and lasted about 90 minutes. Duane Davis, Omar Fateh, Jacob Frey, Jazz Hampton, and Brenda Short all took the stage answering questions about public safety, downtown revitalization, and ethics. Public safety emerged as one of the most widely discussed topics during today's debate, with one key issue being homeless encampments, after 7 people were shot this month at an encampment on East Lake Street. Senator Omar Fateh says he didn't agree with the city's response.
Just like there's gun violence in our encampments, just like there's gun violence issues in our schools that we've seen, within our public spaces, nowhere is safe, and that's a symptom of poverty. But it's easy just to blame it on the encampments because they can't defend themselves. Now, we need to take a housing-first approach. We need to connect people to housing, and I've spoken to people on the ground. The city is not doing a good faith effort in connecting people to resources.
Mayor Jacob Frey says when it comes to the handling of those encampments, the city's approach was to first exhaust all of their options, starting with the provision of resources before taking other measures.
Let's talk about how we handle encampments. First, we go out to visit the encampment and we provide social services. We partner extensively with the county and other jurisdictions. We provide social service support. We offer shelter, oftentimes housing. We even bring a mobile medical unit out to the encampment to make sure that there's things like wound care and health services that are right there on site.
This year's election is November 4th. Early voting already happening. Right now, Minneapolis police are investigating threatening Islamophobic vandalism discovered outside the office of Omar Fateh this week. Someone wrote the message, quote, "Somali Muslim, this warning is no joke," end quote, on the window of his campaign office. It's in the Cedar Riverside neighborhood. Unfortunately, it's not the first time that Fateh has received threats like this. But as Kent Erdahl explains, this is less about an election and all about a community.
Someone walking by State Senator Omar Fateh's campaign office for Minneapolis mayor on Tuesday noticed a small message that set off big alarm bells.
I walked outside and I looked at that and I said, oh, that's a threat.
Though it has since been scrubbed away, a photo of the message reads, "Somali Muslim, this warning is no joke." Senator Fateh's campaign managers aren't joking either.
It's only getting worse.
Especially, they say, after the events of the past few months.
Senator Fateh was on Vance Bolter's list.
Graham Faulkner's referring to the list of lawmakers uncovered after the assassination of DFL House Speaker Melissa Hortman and shooting of Senator John Hoffman. And in recent weeks, they say new threats have emerged after the DFL revoked Fateh's mayoral endorsement due to a voting controversy.
Omar has talked to the FBI individually. We've talked to MPD individually. We filed a report here. We're seeing a great increase in threats against the senator.
In a statement today, Senator Fateh said, "Our campaign will not be deterred by hate speech and vandalism. We will not back down to Islamophobia. I will not be bullied or intimidated. The people of Minneapolis are demanding change, and I will continue fighting for it." But the concern doesn't stop with the senator himself.
And when someone writes something like this on our campaign office, it's not just about Omar. When someone says Somali Muslims, it's not just about Omar, it's about an entire community.
At the Capitol today, Imam Ahmed Shaban with the Muslim American Society said Muslims aren't the only ones feeling that threat.
The reality is there is a national trend of rise in hate speech, in Islamophobia, in anti-Semitism, and hate breeds hate, unfortunately. And the reality is we have to stand against it with courage.
Senator Fateh's opponent, Mayor Jacob Frey, and his wife have been frequent targets of threats and anti-Semitic vandalism at their home, with his wife pleading in a Star Tribune op-ed just weeks ago for protesters to stop targeting their home. In a statement today, Mayor Frey said, "I spoke with Senator Fateh yesterday and made it clear that my office, MPD, and our administration all stand ready to help. Acts of Islamophobia and hate against any religion or ethnicity have no place in Minneapolis.
When the mayor reached out, I think that's the kind of goodwill and good faith that says, hey, we're people. This is not about politics right now. We can't allow things like this to divide us.
The hope is that we can find common ground with each other.
Kent Erdahl reporting there. Yesterday, the Minnesota chapter of his Council on American Islamic Relations, called on law enforcement to investigate the vandalism as a hate crime. The Fateh campaign says they're hopeful they can catch a suspect. A nearby surveillance camera does have a view of their office. We are following unprecedented developments in the nation's capital right now involving former FBI Director James Comey. Yesterday, a federal grand jury indicted Comey and charged him with giving false statements and obstruction of justice. Comey is a longtime adversary of President Trump and has been on the president's list of targets for prosecution for quite some time.
My heart is broken for the Department of Justice, but I have great confidence in the federal judicial system, and I'm innocent. So let's have a trial and keep the faith.
In a post on Truth Social, President Trump wrote this quote, "The beginning of being held responsible for his crimes against our nation," end quote. But speaking to reporters today, President Trump said the indictment is about justice, not revenge, and he expects more people to be prosecuted.
It's not a list, but I think there'll be others. I mean, they're corrupt. These were corrupt, radical left Democrats, because Comey essentially was he was worse than a Democrat. I would say the Democrats are better than Comey, but no, there'll be others. Look, that's my opinion. They weaponized the Justice Department like nobody in history. What they've done is terrible, and so I hope there are others, because you can't let this happen to a country.
Today, new details emerge about a massive cryptocurrency heist as federal officials now say two brothers stole $8 million from the family that they held at gunpoint for hours. Raya Katene has more on this scheme.
A Minnesota family zip-tied, held at gunpoint, and kidnapped. These are the details outlined in criminal complaints against Isaiah and Raymond Garcia, accused of crossing state lines to terrorize a local family in pursuit of their cryptocurrency.
Extremely terrible for the victim in that I don't think that that's the first time that this has happened in the world. If you have cryptocurrency, do not tell anybody that you actually have it.
Minnesota attorney Dan Irwin is not affiliated with this case, but he specializes in crypto fraud and says he receives daily calls from people who've potentially fallen victim to mostly virtual scams.
My average consult for someone who has lost money, and when I say average, is probably $150,000. I have clients that have lost $1 million. I've had clients that have lost $3 million.
According to the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office, the Garcia brothers stole $8 million in cryptocurrency from the family. Court documents say an unknown third party was providing them information about the accounts and transfers while the family was held at gunpoint. The dad tells investigators he believes some of his crypto information was leaked during a data breach, something Irwin says is fairly rare. But he emphasizes that anyone can fall victim to crypto scammers who rely on emotional manipulation to get what they want.
It is not an embarrassment, and it is not an accostation or detriment to their character or intelligence.
Raya Katene reporting that this case also forced Matamidi Public Schools to cancel their homecoming game as police were looking for those suspects. The Garcias are now facing federal charges for kidnapping and cryptocurrency heist. They're still in a Texas jail right now. They'll be extradited to Minnesota for those charges. Well, the Department of Justice is suing Minnesota Secretary of State Steve Simon after he refused to hand over our state's voter rolls. This comes as part of a wider agency effort, which they say is to ensure that states are complying with federal election law. In response, state officials say the department's request is unprecedented and illegal.
We've never seen an agency of the federal government ever demand something as broad and sweeping and with such a huge scope as this. This is everyone's driver's license information, everyone's social security information. We don't know why they specifically need that stuff, and we don't know who they're going to share it with or how it will be made secure, if it ever will.
Minnesota is one of 7 states that now face similar lawsuits. Well, it's no secret rural health care is in a crisis. That's what makes it shocking to some that the Mayo Clinic plans to close 6 clinics by mid-December, forcing patients to travel farther just to get care. Mayo says its decision will strengthen rural health care. But the Southern Minnesota community disagrees, alleging Mayo is putting profits before people. Jessica Hart has more.
Montgomery, a town of 3,200, is about to lose its last clinic.
Having a clinic in town is very important to us.
Rita Hoffman has lived here for 71 years.
That's the last thing I want to see closed.
In southern Minnesota, her clinic is one of 6. Mayo Clinic Health System is closing.
Access to health care should not be limited just by your geography or your zip code.
Outside Mayo Clinic St. Mary's campus, unions representing impacted workers were anything but silent.
When these facilities close their doors, they close to everyone in the community. And travel times become a barrier to health care, even for those with insurance.
December 10th is the last day the health system's Montgomery, Belle Plaine, Wells, Caledonia, North Mankato, and St. Peter locations will see patients.
Healthcare in Greater Minnesota is a very difficult thing to keep going. It impacts people's lives. It impacts the lives of entire communities. It makes it more difficult for many people to receive services, so we are really disappointed.
Todd Profke is St. Peter's city administrator, a town of more than 12,000.
We are going to be better off than most.
Better off because they have other clinics and a city-run hospital.
I think there's a lot of unknowns still that we as a community don't know what's happening yet. So, it's just take it day by day and do the best to reassure our community that they're going to be taken care of.
Stephanie Holden works at Rivers Edge Hospital, where many of the hospital's patients are Mayo patients.
I never would have thought that St. Peter would have lost the clinic location under the Mayo system. I think that is why we were so surprised.
A surprise no one wanted.
It's heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking news impacting thousands of lives.
It's just a symbol to our town. You hate to see something like this close. For all my life, I'm 71 and I've seen a clinic in this town my whole life.
In Montgomery, Jessica Hart, KARE 11 News.
In a statement, Mayo Clinic said, quote, rural and community health care across the country is facing significant challenges, including staffing shortages and declining patient volumes. MCHS is committed to continuing to provide high-quality rural health care, and to do so, we must adapt, end quote. Stick with us. We got more news and weather coming up after the break.